I'll paint out the sign, set where we began. From here once again.
Please welcome Cheyenne Laker, a remarkable aviation researcher and ROTC member, to the Aviate with Ananya podcast. She has a background in aeronautical engineering technology from Purdue University here in Indiana and has a passion for exploring the educational benefits of VR. So I'm very excited to be talking with Cheyenne today. Cheyenne, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm so excited to get to talk to you about aviation.
So me and Cheyenne actually first met when we got to the program here in Indiana. We learned that she has some research going on and that we would be able to take a part in it. And so we've been doing engine failures and a bunch of cool stuff to help our training progress. And so Cheyenne, would you mind introducing your research and tell us what your goals are and your plans for this summer?
Yeah, so I'm Cheyenne Laker. I've been a Purdue University student for quite some time. I'm going on my 6th year being a Purdue student. So I did my full undergrad here. I'm now here for grad school for aviation and aerospace management. And currently Purdue is really interested in setting up a virtual reality lab for our flight students because it's just a very good training tool. It's been used by the military and many other institutions. So my research is to kind of help Purdue incorporate virtual reality into our training courses. So I'm kind of trying to prove to Purdue that it's a useful training tool. So that's why this summer we're training engine failures, and I'm going to be looking at people's progression, how they do on the tests that I'm handing out, what they think about the equipment from the surveys. And we're basically just trying to gauge and see if this is going to be useful for Purdue or not. So yeah, that's kind of what we're looking at. Me specifically, the title of my paper is The Pedagogical Effectiveness of Virtual Reality on Ab Initio Flight Students.
And big words.
Big words. Everyone's like, what does that mean? Basically, it just means I'm looking at the educational potential of virtual reality on beginner flight students. Mm-hmm. So I want to see, a lot of papers have focused on, can virtual reality train students to fly? Mm-hmm. And so far, it's been very successful. That's why a lot of schools like Embry-Riddle, they've had VR for years. But I'm specifically looking at not only can it train you to fly, but can it also teach you the boldface and other things that you need to know to perform those maneuvers and work towards your PPL. So that's what I'm looking at. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So we see that you have a very positive outlook on VR for future training. So how do you see the role of VR evolving in like broad context of aviation in general? And what like scope of impact do you think it'll have on future training in education in general?
Oh, I think VR is already growing so big in aviation. The Air Force and the Navy have been using it for quite a while now to train their pilots. Other schools, like I mentioned, Embry-Riddle. So it's growing, and I think that VR is going to kind of take the place or work side by side with simulated training. Simulators have been used in aviation for a very long time now, but in my paper I mentioned how simulators were once debated. Are they useful? Can you really teach people how to fly in a simulator? Mm-hmm. And VR is just a different simulation. It's a more immersive simulation, but I think that it will kind of take the place of simulators. And I think that it will be used as a training tool in aviation in the future. And I think that VR now is actually falling behind in technology a little bit. In about 10 years, I think that we'll start looking at AR, augmented reality, which is sort of like a mix of virtual and real life.
Oh, yeah.
So I already know that there are some projects being worked on by a retired fighter pilot who is using AR to train people how to fly in fighters, but for cheaper. So they'll fly a more affordable aircraft, but with AR, it looks like and feels like they're training in a fighter jet. So they're saving money by doing that. But I think that VR is going to become a staple in aviation training. And I think that people will have it, have programs downloaded at home and can train from home and work on their skills. And then I think eventually we'll even start advancing from VR into AR and further technologies.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I didn't realize how far ahead we're getting.
Yeah, I'm very excited. I mean, I still think that it will take quite a while until we start seeing that implemented, but VR should. I think every aviation school should have VR. A lot of them do. Purdue is really behind, and all the professors know it, that we need to have VR, especially because we're such a big aviation school. So VR is definitely the way to go for technology. I think that it's practically been proven that it's useful. So yes, but I'm very excited for the future of aviation with all this technology coming out.
That's really interesting. Me and my flight partner, along with our flight instructor, went to like a simulator lab a few days ago, and we checked out some of the huge simulators for regional carriers, for airliners. And he actually said that some simulators are so good at mimicking reality that you can actually get all your flight hours for your ratings with just a simulator. Do you think it's going to be the same way for VR and AR in the future?
I do think that it's going to take some time for the aviation community to accept virtual reality as a training tool, as an official training tool, and there has to be some standardization put in place in order to count those hours. But I fully see VR counting towards hours in the future. I think that it will, just like simulators have. So I think that they'll follow a very similar path. Yeah.
That's interesting. Yeah. So talking about your time at Purdue again, how would you say that your experience at Purdue has influenced your aspirations and your passion for aviation?
Right. So in the same boat as a lot of people in this program, I had thought about going to an academy, thought about college, thought about not going to college at all. I think I was just in the same boat as every kid, and I wasn't sure I could commit to a 24/7 military presence. I don't have any military family really, or at least no one that's been very involved in the military. So that was kind of a new territory for me. So I think that kind of helped give me an idea of where I wanted to go. I had a lot of family who went to Purdue. It felt very familiar to me. Not far from my home. I'm just from Southern Indiana, so I'm like a drive away from home.
That's nice.
So coming to Purdue was a little bit of a no-brainer to me, but I didn't join ROTC, and I know we might talk about this later, but I didn't join ROTC right off the bat. But being Purdue, so once I decided that I wanted to go to Purdue instead of my academy, I wasn't even looking at aviation. I was looking at like food science, just totally different stuff. I was really into biology, but once I saw like planes flying in the air here at Purdue, I was like, I want to check that out.
Yeah.
And I got a tour here. And I totally changed my mind. I'm like, okay, like no brainer. Like I want to come fly. I want to be in aviation.
Full 180.
Oh, totally. Yeah, I totally did. I just felt so inspired. Like from that point on, I knew that this is what I wanted to do. And being at Purdue, I'm thankful we have this awesome airport, really, and that I pretty much had all of my classes at. So every day of my college career, I've pretty much been here at the airport, surrounded by planes all the time. People who love aviation, like talking about planes all the time. We've got libraries that's just books about aviation. So I really think that having that community has been a good support and has been very encouraging for the aviation community. And we also had Amelia Earhart was a professor here. And it's like, that's so cool to me. So
just the cherry on top.
Yeah, a little bit. It's just really neat. So it felt good to have that community here. And then even though Purdue's just a huge school, you can find several pockets of people with similar interests and hobbies and stuff. So I think that being here has definitely pushed me harder towards my goals. And joining ROTC, I joined sophomore year, but all my best friends were in ROTC. I was just like, oh, they look like they're having so much fun all the time. Like I knew it was a lot of work, but I was like, and I was interested in joining the military. I'm like, you know what, I'm gonna try ROTC, and if I don't like it, I'll drop it. I joined, and I'm like, oh no, this is good time. It was hard. It was a lot of work, but just the friends that you make and getting to be with people all the time, I think was nice. It was a really easy way to make friends because you guys have to be together like all the time.
Yeah.
And you kind of have to embrace a lot of sucky things together, which is a great way to make friends. And I think that having a good group of friends in aviation and then being in the military and then having the airport here was just all the ingredients I needed to be successful here. So, yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, that was actually my next question, but you answered it earlier, so we'll skip right past it.
Okay.
So if I'm not wrong, what was your bachelor's degree here at Purdue?
So it was aeronautical engineering and technology. Most people who aren't very familiar with Purdue's degrees, majors, they just hear aeronautical engineering and take that. Aeronautical engineering technology is very different from our aeronautical engineering degree here. So it is a science degree, not an engineering degree. And it primarily focuses on the maintenance and the manufacturing side of aircraft. So I primarily understand how to maintain aircraft. I know the engine, like the airframe, so I understand that. I understand how they're made. And then now my master's in management has really taught me a lot about how to lead. So when I was in high school, and partially in college, I worked at an automobile manufacturing company, very similar to what you'd see at an aircraft manufacturing company like Boeing or something. It's just a degree that kind of propels you. It can propel you in several directions. We have graduates who've gone to NASA, Boeing, Lockheed, Rolls-Royce, GE, you name it. We Caterpillar, which seems off the path, but it was a very good degree for me. I felt like I fit in with the people a lot, and then I picked up a few flight hours here and there. I still got to be at the airport, which was enjoyable. And I'm very excited to start my career as a pilot in the Air Force. The idea was hopefully to do AET, be a pilot in the military, and then I felt like I could be a very well-rounded aviation, a very well-rounded aviator, I guess.
Aviator, yeah.
Yeah.
So, do you have any licenses yet? Are you on your way towards licenses?
Nope. So I flew just for hours.
Just for hours, nice.
I have a good amount of hours flying, but I was kind of in a time crunch to get some hours to compete for the board and get a pilot slot. So for a whole summer, I would just do like cross-country night flights.
Nice.
Like every weekend, I would be up there flying for like 3 hours or so. And I didn't really work on any skills or anything, not a whole lot, because hours were just like my main priority. And I got those hours, quickly turned them in to my cadre, and then I went up for the board and I got a pilot slot. So
yeah, well, congratulations.
Yeah,
that's
thank
the next
you.
The next endeavor for you. I'm very excited for you. And so just through our conversation, you've actually answered 2 more questions. So we're whizzing past those 2. Yeah. So what were some of the key factors and like some of the motivators that made you want to go and aim for that pilot slot? And additionally, what all goes into becoming a pilot in that aspect?
I think that so I was interested in high school. I was like, oh, I really want to volunteer. I was interested in like rescue and stuff like that. I was like, oh, being a rescue pilot sounds very fulfilling to me. So I had actually looked into being a pilot for the Coast Guard, and I went all the way to Louisville, Kentucky, and I had a great chat with the guys down there about joining the Coast Guard, but ultimately they didn't have any positions, or they told me, they're like, I don't think we have any positions open for pilot. It's very, very tough to get. Being a pilot in pretty much any any branch I've been told has been fairly competitive. But yeah, they didn't have any positions open. I was like, okay, well, I want to fly and potentially do rescue or something. So I went over to our Air Force recruiter here at Purdue and told them exactly what I wanted to do, what my goals were, and they explained to me if they thought that I could achieve that in the Air Force. And I felt like it was a good fit, and I felt like they weren't trying to lie to me to get me to join.
Yeah.
They told me directly what the military can offer me, and I felt like I was worth taking that risk.
Mhm. Yeah, because it's a pretty big commitment. So
Yeah.
you'd want to make sure.
Especially as a pilot, and that's
Yeah.
a discussion we had, is that a lot of jobs in the military is a 4-year commitment.
The
But-
tenure, yeah.
Yeah, pilot is a 10-year, and that's not counting the 2 years of training you're doing either. So really, it's a 12-year commitment, which is a very long time, very long time. But yeah, I don't know. I was just very highly motivated. Like, I knew when I joined Air Force ROTC that my vision was I want to be a pilot. I didn't see myself doing anything else at the time.
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't know if I want to do anything else for the Air Force. I just know that I want to fly. And I just felt very driven. And I think in order to become a military aviator, I think being driven is probably the most important thing, most important quality that anyone can have, because you're going to have to work really hard to get a spot. And then even once you get that spot, there's still a lot of work that comes after that. So you very much have to be driven and have to be excited about flying. I think that that's step one, is commit. Know that that's what you want to do. And then to have more details, as you kind of know, that there are like physical requirements, you have to meet medical requirements. So there is like a Air Force SAT, I think it's called the ASVAB. It's been quite a while since I've taken it. But you essentially have to do pretty good on the ASVAB.
Did you take the AFOQT? Is that one of them?
The AFOQT, that sounds very familiar. Yeah. So it's been a long time since I've taken these, but yeah, that sounds very familiar.
That's the one we had to take for Flight Academy.
Okay.
For our main score. Yeah.
Okay, so I think that is one, the ASVAB and AFOQT, and that's generally just like SAT. So those tests, I mean, obviously, try and do as good as you can do. There's not like a score that I've heard that they cut off of or anything like that. So just trying to do the best you can do. If you know that maybe you could do better, talk to your officers about possibly retaking it and stuff like that. Doing good on your physical fitness. So for the Air Force right now, we do a 1.5 mile run, a minute of push-ups and a minute of sit-ups, and trying to get as close to 100 as you can. Generally, I would say the Air Force considers pretty much anything above a 90 as being really good. I would recommend getting a 95 or higher
for that competitive advantage.
For pilots, yeah. I mean, honestly, the highest score you can get in any of these categories, the better, obviously. If you want more specific numbers, usually they release some of the demographics and numbers, some of the statistics. They usually release that sometime after they pick up pilots for the year. So you can find that information on the internet. So they might have like, oh, here was the average fitness score, here was the average whatever. And that kind of helps you gauge if you might be competitive or not. Because I know in some areas I excelled, some I was like, ooh, I'm like right on that line. And it's tough. And then they also make you take like a multitasking test, which we're not really like allowed to tell people about it. But essentially it's going to gauge if you're able to watch like several instruments and maneuver a plane.
Yeah, that'd be pretty important.
Yeah, it would be. It's a good skill to have. and I was trying to think cadre ranking. So for ROTC, it's good to be involved, to want to help others out, be a team player, talk with your cadre, be seen, have a voice. All that is really good. And that's going to help your cadet ranking, which goes towards it. And then your flight hours go towards it as well. So all that stuff adds up. And, you know, some years they pick up a lot of people for a pilot slot. And some years they just don't. And it's really tough. And it can be very tough. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So looking ahead, what are your more long-term goals and aspirations as a pilot in the Air Force and beyond? How do you plan to make a meaningful impact, and how do you plan to grow yourself in the coming years?
So as I kind of mentioned, I think serving others is very fulfilling to me. So whatever sort of airframe I can fly to serve others is very interesting to me. That's very motivating to me. As of right now, I've talked to a lot of instructor pilots, and I really like what they do. I really enjoy working with you and all the other cadets here on virtual reality training. That's been very fulfilling to me. I enjoy it immensely. And so that gets me very excited, and I hope that maybe my place in the Air Force will be training future pilots and kind of helping grow the aviation community. We definitely have pilot shortages in military and in civilian life. We have pilot shortages, and to be a part of the aviation community to help work on that, which could be brought on with VR technology, but just to kind of help grow the aviation community and then teach people how to fly, I think is sort of the direction I'm heading in. So I hope that works out. In the military, you kind of never know. And, you know, I still have to finish grad school, go to pilot training.
Yeah.
That's still a few years in the making, so who knows where I'm going to be then. But right now I feel very inspired to teach. So I think that might be where I head. But really, any sort of job that lets me serve others in the Air Force is going to be where I'm at.
So talking about teaching, I think you told me earlier that that would be the goal as a pilot, like training.
Yeah. So I would love to be an instructor pilot. So once I finish pilot training, if I can tolerate sitting in the T6 any longer, because I've heard after pilot training everybody's ready to get out of the T6. But if I can stomach it a little bit longer, I'd really like to be an instructor. And then from there on, I'd really like to be one of the instructors who trains the instructor pilots, because I've personally met a lot of them. They're at the base in Randolph, and they've been absolute joy to be with. I really enjoy working with them. Very nice people. And yeah, I totally see myself fitting in that community. And I think that enjoying the community you're working with, because depending on what you're flying, there could be a totally different community. Like fighters are going to have very different thought process generally from like cargo pilots. And so I think it's good to find that community if you're a military aviator and find what works for you, because I think that community is going to be a big role in your success and in the military as a pilot. So
yeah. So here's a more fun question. I know for on the VR, there's like a bunch of different types of planes, and very interesting. Isn't there a submarine or something?
There is a submarine, yeah. We'll have to figure that one out.
Yeah. So what's your favorite airplane to fly on VR?
I've personally enjoyed flying the F-35. I come in here and I kind of fly that, and I know it's like, oh, it's the new fast one. Like, oh, of course. A lot of people have a lot of fondness for the F-22. I wish they had the F-14 Tomcat in there. I love the F-14, but they do not. We do not have that one yet. Maybe we can get it. But the F-35 is pretty fun. I think it's a pretty smooth ride, a lot different than the Cessna.
Definitely.
It's fun to do, you know, all those barrel rolls and flips and stuff. And it's just so overwhelming. Like the cockpit looks like you're in a spaceship.
It does.
Which I think is a lot of fun. I think it's a little bit quieter than the F-22. I thought the F-22 sounded pretty loud in the VR headset. So, yeah, I like the F-35. It's a smooth ride. Feels good.
Oh, that's nice. Well, last questions. Thanks for bearing with me this long. What advice would you give to aspiring aviation students who are considering a career in military aviation specifically, or like who are going into research like you are right now?
I think I would say, first off, thank you for bearing with me on this conversation, as I've just been the one chatting for a long time. But what I would say to anyone who's interested in being in aviation, my first note would be to do a discovery flight if you haven't already. And if you're like, when I did my discovery flight, I wasn't really sure if I was going to like aviation or not. I personally got a little motion sickness at the time. Now that I've been in aviation for a while, I've flown for a while, I don't really get motion sickness. But at the time, I was like, oh, I get motion sickness. Like, I didn't grow up with aviation. I just wasn't sure I was really going to fit in. But once I kept flying more and more, I got used to it. And I think that it gets a little addicting. I'm like, oh, like I wanted my pilot's license and I can fly my family. And like, I think that to anyone who's new in aviation, if you really feel passionate about it, just keep at it. And don't think about whether you fit in or not, or, you know, anything like that. I would just keep at it. And then to be a military aviator, like I mentioned before, just have drive. Like if you feel confident that this is what you want to do, then stick with that. You know, be confident in yourself, work hard, and just go for it. You just have to full send it. But that's what I would recommend. I would totally recommend just working your butt off. But
I mean, if that's what it
it.
takes, then
yeah, it does. It's a lot of work. It's definitely a lot of work, but it's very rewarding, and I'm very excited to begin my career. And then to share aviation with others has been very enjoyable too. Like I've talked with my family a lot about aviation now, and they've learned a lot, and they kind of enjoy aviation as a hobby with me now. And I work at the airport here at Purdue. I love seeing new freshmen come in and they're all excited to start flying in their first lesson. And I'm excited for them. And it's such a great time. I really enjoy the aviation community because everybody's so passionate about it, that it's a really good feeling. So if you have decided you're like, I want to fly, I want to be a military aviator, then just go for it. So that's what I would recommend.
nice. Well, thank you so much, Cheyenne, for joining us on the Aviate with Ananya podcast and just sharing your experiences here with us. To our listeners, stay tuned for more captivating discussions just like this one as we continue to explore the world of aviation. And until then, happy flying! Woohoo!